and we are back with the classic live at 5 recorded gameplay here. We're going to be streaming the finals here of the West Coast Playtest League. So this is the tournament that I have been showing games from, my recorded games. Unfortunately, the semifinal was not recorded properly. There was an issue where the file was somehow corrupted or not the proper length, missed the end part of the game, unfortunately. So we're just going to be showing the finals here, not the semifinals. But long story short, I won in the semifinals. My opponent here, MeekoBeat, won in his semifinals. And now we are on to the finals. It's going to be another Warrior Mirror. My previous game against MeekoBeat in the Swiss was extremely close. I believe that one's in my VODs if you guys want to check that out. It was a wild game, really, and it had a very unusual finish as well. And now we're going to see what will happen in the second encounter. So before I start actually broadcasting the game, just a quick overview here. I'm playing a warrior deck that focuses on using unconditional go again in order to attack multiple times or do multiple things, even if the opponent is going to stop my Dawnblade hit. And my opponent, MeekoBeat here, is playing a warrior deck that's a little more grindy and long game focused. Last time he almost fatigued me out. In fact, at the end of the game, I had no cards left in my deck and no cards in hand, one card in arsenal, and that was it. But yeah, so in this situation, we're going to see what's happened. But because I played against him previously and I know he's going for that long game strategy, I might approach this one a little differently. All right, let's get the game going. This is the finals of the West Coast Playtest League. So we're starting by rolling off. Warrior versus Warrior, you want to go second typically. I win the roll-off, so I believe I do choose to go second. And the reason that you want to go second is that tempo is very important in this game. If you go first, your opponent can block freely with several cards and then refill their hand, because the second player refills their hand as well as the first player on that first turn. So if you, going second can be better because it gives you the first opportunity to attack your opponent in a way that's actually going to impact their tempo for the game, rather than maybe causing them to block with cards that they're just going to get back. So my opening hand here is not amazing. I end up pitching an Ironsong Response red to swing with the Dawnblade. I do have a Glint in hand, and I know I can play that and then play that Scar for a Scar for 4 and potentially put that Steelblade Shunt into arsenal. So coming in here with the Dawnblade, swinging for 3, and planning to use that go again in order to go again with the Glint the Quicksilver, and then play the Scar for 4. I was sort of hoping my opponent would swing at me so that I could just take the hit and take some damage, but that's not what he opted to do. He just takes the hit here, so I'm thinking, do I want to go for the Scar, or do I want to go for the Dawnblade? And I end up deciding I'm just going to go for the Dawnblade swing because it's higher priority to defend against. Probably this is going to draw out at least one card to block, and maybe more if he's worried about an attack reaction. So he goes for a double armor block. I'm actually pretty happy to see this. So the advantage of doing the double armor block here is that if the card that I have in hand is an Ironsong Response, I can't play it because its reprise won't be active. So it guarantees that he has stopped it because I don't have energy to play anything that isn't Ironsong Response. But it also means that he has actually used his armor, which is, you know, armor is kind of a non-renewable resource. Once you've used it, and you often want to save it for later. So I'm fine with having damaged his armor. The problem is he's not going to be able to potentially do a big turn of his own. So I'm thinking about my turn. I do have that red Steelblade Shunt in arsenal. That would be a good option to shut down this. It could potentially shut down the Spoils of War while not enabling any reprise. But if he has an attack reaction that doesn't rely on reprise, like a Razor Reflex, for instance, he would be able to get in anyway. So this is kind of a hard defense. Looking at my own hand, I do definitely have some stuff that I'd like to play next turn. So I have a Ravenous Rabble and an E-Strike. And I would ideally like to play both of those. So I end up pitching, so I pitch the Steelblade Supremacy that I have in hand to play the red Shunt. It does stop his attack, and then he plays a CNC. So I'm very happy that I played that Steelblade Shunt now, because his CNC, I can just let the damage in and it hits me for 6, but it's totally fine to let that hit for 6, so that so that I don't find myself in a situation where I am blocking too heavily and I can do a big attack and retake some tempo. If that E-Strike had come in while I still had a card in Arsenal, it would have been a lot more threatening, because it could have potentially cost me that powerful defense reaction. I might have blocked, and then it might have left me with a much weaker turn. I would much rather have this situation or I'm sorry, not the E-Strike, the CNC. I'd much rather have this type of situation where the CNC is not threatening the CNC is not actually threatening my Arsenal, and I can afford to just take the hit. This also means that I'm under him on life, which is actually good in this matchup. It's not good if it means that you're dying, but because I am running life for a life, I want to be under him on life, and because both of us are running Arcanite Skullcap, that card also gets more powerful when you're lower life. So often, if you're lower life but higher armor than your opponent, which I am right now, that's a very good place to be. So I go for the Ravenous Rabble. It reveals a Warrior's Valor red, so that's a pretty strong card. And it's coming in for 4, so it's actually 4 with Go Again. And my opponent goes for a single block and takes 1 damage. That's fairly standard. So now I'm going to do an E-Strike. I think I do an E-Strike 5 draw here, because I know my top card is powerful, but it might just be an E-Strike 7. Yeah, E-Strike 5 draw. So in this case, because I saw that I have a powerful card that I would like to put in Arsenal, and it's a red, which I would want to have more energy, if possible, to play with, I end up putting that card into the Arsenal after an E-Strike 5 draw. Unfortunately, I do end up drawing an all-red hand, but even though it's an all-red hand, I do have 1 more card than I would have previously. However, he then follows up with a CNC, which is threatening, of course, to destroy the card that I have in Arsenal. I go for a double block, blocking with both my cards that block for 3, stop the CNC, but now I'm not left in a very good position with respect to my energy, so I'm going to go for the Ravenous Rabble, revealing a Flock of the Featherwalkers, so it's coming in for 4 with Go Again. And then I'm going to follow that up by pitching, I believe I pitched the Razor to go for the Dawnblade Swing. My opponent does another single card block, takes 1 damage. I believe he takes 1 damage, presumably. Yeah, 1 damage. And then I pitch and Dawnblade. So in that case, I pitched instead of using Tunic, because in this matchup it can be important to keep a Tunic up in case there's a situation where you're going to want to use a Steelblade Shunt. You do not want to have to pitch a card to pay for Steelblade Shunt, though my opponent just did. I'm a little surprised that he did that instead of using his Tunic, actually. But I think he wanted to get that unmovable, or I'm sorry, not unmovable, that overpower headed towards the bottom of his deck, since it's not good right now. And yeah, if you see, and then we see that the card that he pitched was an Ironsong Determination, which is also not good right now. So in that situation, I think that my opponent realized that he had cards that he wanted to pitch, but was only going to be able to pitch 1 of them on his turn, and decided to pitch for his Shunt instead of using his Tunic for his Shunt, so that he can keep his Tunic up and he can get those cards that are going to be better in the late game towards the bottom of his deck. Okay, so then I end up just taking 3 damage from his Dawnblade Swing here. And I go for the Warrior's Valor in Arsenal, swinging in for 6. I have a Razor Reflex and a Route in hand, but in theory I could play both of them if I used my Tunic, though I would not actually have the energy to do a second Dawnblade attack at that time. My opponent is going to go... my opponent goes for a Shunt, a red Shunt there, coming in to block the attack completely and deal me 1 damage. So in this situation, I think he showed me that he has another Shunt, if I recall correctly. But I do have the Razor here, and I do go for that Razor. So Razor Reflex coming in, and he is going to go for that second Shunt. A yellow Shunt that time, so he is blocking 11, and I am dealing 9. I could, in theory, route him, but I wouldn't have the energy to do another attack, so I don't do it, and I just put Flock in my arsenal, and that's that. But I did make him use 2 of his Steelblade Shunts there, which is something that I'm pretty okay with, quite frankly. I am behind on life, but I am above him on armor right now, and I have pretty good tempo. You know, he's getting a 2-card turn, and I'm going to probably get a 4 or 5-card turn here. It's just me moving some of my sideboard stuff out of the way, and now I'm thinking about what to do here. End up going for a simple block with a Spoils of War. Now you might ask, why would I block? The reason is that in this situation, I'm going to go for the Flock of the Featherwalkers here. I'm going to do Ravenous Rabble, and then I'm going to Ravenous Rabble. Unfortunately, hits a blue and is only coming in for 2 damage. But yeah, I'm going to do the Ravenous Rabble, and then I'm going to pitch Route and play the Flock that I have in Arsenal. And because of that, the Spoils of War isn't really needed. I want to pitch the Route anyway because it tends to be a later game card. Play the Flock, getting my Quicken token, reveal Snatch. This is also really good because it means I can put Snatch in Arsenal. Snatch tends to be a very strong card to put in Arsenal because the benefit of drawing a card is much higher when you have Arsenal open. And putting it in Arsenal means that if you play it from there, you're guaranteed to have Arsenal open right after you play it. Similarly, if you are running, I believe it's Nature's Path Pilgrimage, that card can refill Arsenal if you don't have a card there, so it's a really good card to put in Arsenal, because that way you know for sure that Arsenal will be open for the potential card from Nature's Path when you actually play it. Okay, so my opponent is coming in here with another Dawnblade Swing for 3. So in the previous game, I got really depleted because I kept unnecessarily blocking these 3 damage Dawnblade Swings. Or I kept taking 3 damage Dawnblade Swings. So I'm thinking about my situation, and I don't necessarily want to just take the damage here. At the same time, I have a really aggressive hand, but I end up deciding that I am going to block. So I block with 1 card, and then he plays a Remembrance from Arsenal. Probably shuffling some of his stronger cards back in, so he grabs the Spoils of War, very strong card. I think he'll probably, I don't remember what he gets, but I assume he's going to get that CNC. Yep, there's CNC. And I don't remember what his 3rd card is at all. I think CNC is a very strong card. I think E-Strike's a very strong card. I think Spoils is a very strong card. He has another Spoils in there, so he's going to go for 2 Spoils and a CNC, definitely increasing the amount of threat that's in his deck, having now used that Remembrance. I personally don't like playing Remembrance against a Warrior, simply because I don't like having cards that don't block against Warrior, and it tends to not be a long game in my experience. But in our previous game, he did almost or essentially fatigue me out, so he may be more used to that long game strategy. So I decided to lead off with the Snatch here. The reason that I'm doing this is because Snatch has, if it hits, draw a card, so it's coming in for 4 damage, and if it hits, it will draw a card, and that actually is going to be really annoying because he'll have to block with equipment and an item, or with a defense reaction. Indeed, we see equipment and an item. Unfortunately, I don't have a Razor Reflex to get in over that, but it would be annoying. And then I'm going to come in with just a Dawnblade Swing for 3. So we'll see if he blocks that. He does block it. I have a Glint the Quicksilver, so I could play Glint and hope to top deck either a reaction to get me over his attack or another attack that I can play with the Go Again from Glint. But I decide not to do it. I think that's kind of a risky play. I would rather keep the Glint in my hand, put a card in Arsenal, and then we see that the card that I would have drawn would have been a Steelblade Supremacy, so it would have been disadvantageous to go for the Panic Glint there. All right, now it's my opponent's turn. He did use 2 of his cards last turn to block, plus an equipment. So now he's going to have a more limited turn. Pitches a Glint to throw out a Dawnblade Swing for 3. This time I do decide to just take it because I have a quite aggressive hand that I actually really like. And let's see what I go for here. There's always kind of that decision of whether or not to just take the damage or whether or not to try to push through what exactly you want to do. So I end up going for pitch the Glint, play a red hit and run, and Steelblade Supremacy coming in for 5. He has he does have a option to get me with a shunt for 6. I then have a Snatch coming in for 4 afterwards, using that unconditional Go Again from the hit and run. But the card draw from the Snatch in this situation is not going to be very good because Arsenal is full. So in a scenario where I draw a card that, even if it's like a Springboard Somersault or something I really want to have in Arsenal, it's not actually going to be practical. If you're running instants, Snatch is extra valuable. Like if I had Sigil of Solace in here, I could draw that and immediately play it. I draw a Scar for a Scar, which I can't play. So then I just draw my other 3 cards. That card draw essentially did nothing. If I had a Sigil of Solace or Remembrance or something, I could immediately play it after drawing it from that Snatch, and that would have given the card draw added value, but that's not what happened here. It's not as good with my deck if the Arsenal is not clear, or I don't have... it's quite good if I have a Quicken token, because then the card that I draw can potentially go into the rest of the turn, so... kind of an unusual card in some ways, but it can be good. And yeah, in that situation, probably not seeing it at its like maximum power level, but still not a bad card. Did end up doing a point of damage. 4 damage for 0 is still a decent thing to have. So right now I'm lower life than my opponent. I'm thinking about what I want to do. So I have a hit and run yellow. Normally I would want to lead off with that Scar for a Scar, but what I've determined here is that I can come in with Spoils of War for 5 go again, and then if my opponent blocks this from hand or whatever, I can then pitch Scar, use Tunic, and come in with a CNC. So he blocks from hand for 6. Actually, he overblocks to 8, so that way if I have a reaction that will put me up by 3, I still won't be able to get in. And that's just what I want to see, because now I can CNC for 6, and my opponent can't stop it. He actually takes 6 damage and loses his card in Arsenal. Because he overblocked the first attack, he doesn't have the ability to stop that CNC. Even if his card in hand blocked for 3 and he used his Tunic and he used his Skullcap, he would only block for 5, and it turns out his card in hand is a potion that blocks for 0. So he was just totally unable to stop that, which is a really good moment for me. That's buying me a lot of tempo. He does play the Time Snap potion, which could be difficult for me. I have, unfortunately, a pretty defensive hand, but I do have a Singing Steel Blade. So I'm thinking about that. I'm like, okay, if he blocks this, I can use the Singing Steel Blade to get a Glint the Quicksilver. That'll give me a go again, and it will give me the +1, allowing me to get in. That's potentially going to let me do some damage. I don't remember what I actually have in Arsenal this time. So he ends up just taking the damage, and I actually decide I want to pressure him more. I don't want to let my momentum fall, and I actually break my refraction bolters despite not having used the armor on it in order to maintain the aggression. So now my opponent's Tunic is live, or my opponent's Skullcap is live, so he can block with the Skullcap, and he does. So that's going to actually be blocking for 2 since he has less life than me. And then in addition, he hits me with a Steel Blade Shunt yellow. So he's blocking, I think, 7 here. But, all things considered, him having to use an armor block and him playing this Shunt. And now I'm going to go for the Singing Steel Blade search. I can get an Iron Song response. I don't actually know why I'm doing this, because this just puts me to 7. I think I might have done this wrong. Oh, you know what? He did have 1 counter on his... sorry, I just couldn't see it from this view. He did have 1 counter on his Skullcap, so that actually lets me get in for 1 and get a Dawnblade counter. That's what it is. So he was blocking for 6 total, not 7 total, I think. Not entirely sure what happened there, though. I thought he did not have a counter on his Skullcap. Oh, you know what? I think it was actually that I used the Brave Forge bracers. So I was actually swinging in for 4, and then I give it +4, so I'm at 8, and he's at 7, so I get in for 1. Yeah, I think that's right. Okay, because I think I had some extra energy that turn with which to use the Brave Forge bracers. Yeah. Sorry, we were playing this game over voice instead of by text, so we weren't spelling everything out in a way that makes it that legible here. All right, so he comes in with a swing. I believe that is blue Valor coming in for 4 with go again, and I block for 2 and then play the Springboard Somersault from hand for another 2. So then I'm going to do Warrior's Valor into a buffed Dawnblade swing. So coming in here for 6 total with go again. 6 total with go again, 2 copper on hit, and then I'm going to be able to follow that up with this Scar for a Scar. Yeah, so he goes for a heavy block. I love to see it. The heavy block here, since I'm not planning to get in with an attack reaction, that heavy block ends up just meaning that he doesn't have much left to defend against my Scar for a Scar. So I do lose my token, but I also scored 4 damage and broke up a lot of his tempo. Sometimes you do need to do something like this just to try to make someone lose that token, but for me at least, I'm not that unhappy with the situation, quite frankly. All right, so now my opponent's just coming in with a Dawnblade swing, coming in for 3 damage, and I decide to just take it. And on my turn here, I am going to pitch this to play Flock and show a Singing Steel Blade. Now, you might ask, why didn't you block with that Twinning Blade? The answer is that Steel Blade Supremacy, Twinning Blade, and the Quicken token combo together really well. And I'm thinking about the future. So I'm like, I'm willing to take this hit because now what I'm going to be able to do is on my next turn, I'm going to be able to play Steel Blade Supremacy, swing with the Dawn Blade for 5. If it hits, draw a card, and I'll have the go again from the Quicken token. So then if I use the Twinning Blade, I'll be able to do another swing for 5, and if it hits, draw. So now my opponent sends a Flock of the Featherwalkers my way. This is just damage. So in this situation, because I have an aggressive plan for my next turn, and I'm also low on energy, probably what I'm going to do here is not block, though I don't remember exactly what I do. Yeah, because I think what I want to do is pitch the Valor and pitch the E-Strike and play a Steel Blade Supremacy plus swing, so for that 2 energies. Then I'm coming in for 5, and then I can also play the Twinning Blade and use Tunic to come in for another 5. Though I actually have other options. I think I may change my plan here and end up deciding I want to block some. And what I'm going to do instead of that, because I don't necessarily have an attack reaction, is I'm going to go for the... I think I might go for the E-Strike, draw a card with go again. Repost 5 says, where them blues at when you need them? Haha. Yeah. It's interesting. I think we had to rewind here for some reason. I don't know why. I think that's why it had that little weird stuff. Yeah, so, I'm definitely running a deck that has a lot of red. I have more than half my deck is red, and I'm running, I think, 15, maybe 16 blues. So I do definitely have some of these situations where the thing that I most want to do isn't necessarily going to be something that's possible, actually, given the specific cards that I have in my hand. So I end up actually putting that Twinning Blade away with my E-Strike, but I'm going to do E-Strike 5, draw a card. And so my opponent blocks with 1 card, and now, I'm going to end up probably just pitching and swinging here. And yeah, we'll see what happens. I pitch the Razor here, swing for 3. And, it ended up being a situation where this is not the really cool turn that I was hoping for. But yeah, still ended up getting some cards out of his hand and doing some damage. I'm whittling him down. And I do have a substantial life lead plus armor. He actually just draws up this turn. I don't know what he had in hand. It might have just been a very defensive hand. I have a red shunt in Arsenal that I have yet to use, so I'm feeling pretty good. Like, normally if you have a red shunt in Arsenal, that's a pretty good spot to be in against Warrior, just because it's like, this is the main threat that I care about. So here I do something a little funny, I think. I think I do both the Warrior's Valor and the hit and run. Yeah, so it's a little silly, but I'm going in for 6 with guaranteed go again because I want to play that Scar for a Scar that I have in hand, and I think there's a good chance he'll stop me here. So I actually play the Warrior's Valor. He has a red shunt in Arsenal as well. But he has to pitch to play it because his Tunic isn't charged up yet, and then I do throw out that shunt for another 4 damage, and I'm really whittling him down, so he kind of has to block this, and he ends up actually pitching to play a blue shunt against it to block it completely, and that means he only has 1 card in hand, which he ends up just arsenaling. So in this situation, I'm actually really happy about what's going on in this game because I have a life advantage, I have more equipment block left, and I have a tempo advantage. My opponent is often just reacting to what I'm doing. So I'm very happy about that situation. So I'm looking to see how many shunts he's played. He's played 7. I don't know what else I was typing in there. I do think he may be playing all 9 shunts in this game, which is funny little thing to have happen. So I end up realizing here that if I pitch the yellow or I'm realizing now, I think I do this in the game too. If I pitch the yellow singing Steel Blade to do Warrior's Valor plus swing, and my opponent blocks with anything from hand, I can play Glint, and then with the card that I drew, pitch and play CNC, because even if I draw a red with that Glint, I'm going to be able to use the red plus my Tunic. So I end up coming in with the, so I am pitching that yellow from the hand. My opponent does a double block from hand, and he has a sink below, which I say, he can resolve. And then I'm going to come in with my Glint, draws me a card, and then I'm going to be able to pitch that card for the CNC. And there we have it, CNC coming in for 6. So this is these plays where you end up being able to throw out a CNC after you did another strong attack is these are really strong plays. Starfreak says, "Hey Tower, glad to see you running." Yeah, good to see you. I'm doing scheduled streams Tuesday and Thursday, starting at 5:00 p.m. Pacific, with recorded games that I've played in the past. So this is the finals of the West Coast Playtest League tournament. So my CNC ends up hitting, and it actually destroys a Tome of Fyendal that he had in Arsenal. So I'm very happy about that, because he could have played the Tome of Fyendal using his Tunic and Time Snap Potion in order to heal. Okay. And then looking at this stuff here, I'm going to go for a Iron Song Determination attack here. So he does, however, have the ability to stop that with a Sink Below. Unfortunately, with the hand that I had here with 3 different hit and runs, I didn't have a ton of options. Ended up going for the Iron Song Determination. Normally this is too early for that, and I would like to pitch it, but I figured it would be, more aggressive than the other things that I had. I'm not entirely sure what he has here, because he just arsenals and passes. It's very unusual for this to happen. It could be that he's trying to set up some kind of combo, or that he has an extremely defensive hand. So I'm pretty happy about that, though, because it means that I can keep attacking with full tempo. So this time I'm coming in with a Dawnblade Swing for 3 with Go Again. He's going to have to defend with something because he only has 3 life. Blocks with a Twinning Blade, and now I can just go in with the Command and Conquer. I'm actually not sure why I didn't play the Razor Reflex. I think maybe what I was thinking is that he likely had a defense reaction in Arsenal, and I wanted to make it so that he wouldn't use it, so that the CNC would be more threatening. So once again, he just draws up. This is a situation that I really like to see as a warrior. It's awkward that I still have this. Defense reaction in Arsenal that I haven't been able to play. I end up going for a Snatch here, and I'm going to potentially try to threaten him with a Razor Reflex, so that'll make it so that if I hit, I will have a Go Again. He blocks for exactly 4, so then I think I'm going to pitch the Springboard Somersault to play Razor. And then I have 1 left over for a potential Dawnblade Swing, but this is actually lethal if he doesn't have a defense reaction. So the odds of me actually getting the Go Again are pretty limited, although he could have a blue defense reaction. So he does have another Shunt. He had it in Arsenal, as I was sort of expecting, and he has to use it here in a situation where it doesn't deal me damage, so I'm pretty happy with that. All things considered, that ended up being fine. He also pitched a card to play it again instead of using his Tunic, but now he's going to use his Tunic. So he has this Quicken token, I guess, from really long ago. I think actually that's why he wasn't doing these attacks. I think he was saving his Quicken token to try to do something really big. But in that situation, I think it ended up being like, this is something really cool that he's doing, but he has no cards, so I can just shut it down with the Shunt that I have in Arsenal. I know that he doesn't have any tricks that he can play against it, even though that's a powerful attack. I think that he has lost too much tempo by not attacking and letting me do big turns. You can sort of get into a bad spot in this game where if you defend too heavily, you end up being put on the defensive more. It kind of snowballs. Like if I overblock everything with 3 cards, then all I can do is pitch 1 card and swing or whatever. So it's not necessarily going to let me do that much. So I attack with a Dawnblade, and he overblocks me to 9. I'm coming in for 3, and then I go for the Glint top deck there. I think I was looking quickly to see what I had in terms of options there, and the Glint top deck is going to let me play this Overpower and the Iron Song Response, getting in for 1 damage, and then I use Bracers and swing for 4. He is able to stop it, but he has to burn his Tunic, so he's now at 1 life, and his hand is empty. So in that situation, the Glint top deck ended up being a good move because it allowed me to play a powerful reaction that let me get in and get that second attack. And since he had to just do nothing, I am going to try to take the opportunity to be aggressive. Coming in with E-Strike 5, go again. He blocks for 5. I don't have a Razor. But then I'm going to be able to play this Scar for 4, and he has to double block it. He blocks with 2 somersaults, and I can just put a card in Arsenal. So I actually gained a card there, and my opponent had to use his whole hand again. So I kind of have him on the ropes at this point. This is not a situation you want to be in this game, where your opponent is able to just throw out all these attacks, and you're very much forced into a defensive posture. Okay, so I'm going to throw a... Yeah, okay, so that's... I do the Iron Song... I don't know why I said that to 4. That's wrong. Okay, I do the Iron Song... Pitch the blue Iron Song response to play Supremacy. Yeah, and then I'm going to play this hit and run and play the... and swing the Dawnblade, coming in for 5 with go again, and if it hits, I'll draw. Although the hit on draw doesn't matter because at this point any damage kills him. And then I'm going to be able to play the Flock of the Featherwalkers from my hand, and I'll be able to have that red hit and run saved to give its damage boost to the Flock of the Featherwalkers next turn. So he fully blocks me there, and then here comes the Flock coming in for another 5 damage, and I get that token, and he is able to block for exactly 5, but once again, he has blocked with every card that he has, and I'm going to be able to get a Quicken token set up, and I have that red hit and run to buff the damage on an attack potentially. I don't, unfortunately, actually have another attack that I can play unless, of course, it is a Twinning Blade attack. I could, in this situation, actually swing my Dawnblade and then play Singing Steel Blade to find a Twinning Blade and then attack with the second swing. So I end up pitching, I pitch my Overpower, coming in for 3 with go again. He has to block. I have Route and Singing Steel Blade, so I'm really threatening here. He goes for a single block, and I go for the Singing Steel Blade here is great because not only does it give me the +1, which is enough to represent lethal, but also I'm going to use it to find the Twinning Blade, and I use that. So even if he has a defense reaction to stop me here, I'm going to be able to make that second attack, and I'm going to be able to buff that second attack. He does have the defense reaction here. So if I had gone for just like, I don't know, some other card to give me +3, and he had stopped me there, it would have been a scenario where I could have been blown out by a defense reaction because the defense reactions come in for 4, so Singing Steel Blade for +4 wouldn't necessarily stop me. So then I do go for the hit and run red into Dawnblade for 6, and I can route on this defense, but I actually don't need to because one of the cards in his hand blocks for 2 and he's out of armor, so he can only block 5. I get in for the 1 damage that I need. And yeah, I could have pitched the red shunt and used my tunic to play the route, but didn't end up being necessary. So that was the game. And yeah, so I was victorious in the West Coast Playtest League tournament with my Dorinthea deck, winning in the finals against MeekoBeat's own Dorinthea deck. And this game was a lot more favorable for me than the previous game against MeekoBeat, which I think was partially because I think maybe I was playing this one a little better. I wasn't necessarily letting myself take as much damage early on, which put me into a spot where I had to block more than I wanted late and ended up basically fatiguing. But also I think, maybe I just had some better draws. Maybe stuff just lined up better. I think that he spent probably too long waiting on that Quicken token of his in order to get like a big attack going. I don't know. It's a tough situation. If you really get put in the defensive like that and you have to block with a bunch of stuff, and then that means that your opponent is going to be able to keep putting you on the defensive by doing big offensive turns, it's pretty dangerous. On the other hand, it's possible that you can go into a very defensive stance and just, wait for your opponent to draw a non-aggressive hand. But depending on what deck they're playing, that might be quite a bit of a wait. My deck here, this is actually it in a more mid-range configuration. Against Warrior Mirror, I put in a lot of defense reactions, but normally I'm only running 2 defense reactions and I'm playing very aggressively. So waiting for a non-aggressive turn, it depends on what you're playing against. There are some decks where it's there's a chance that they're going to get, if you play against Ira in Blitz, so Ira is a really good deck in Blitz, but Ira also runs a very high density of defense reactions for the format. So I think there's, I think a lot of those decks are running 8 defense reactions in Blitz, or even potentially even more. You might even see 8 to 10 defense reactions plus 2 to 4 instants that just heal you and don't deal damage, plus a bunch of blue cards that are combo and are only being run for the pitch and for the blocking 3 and synergizing with Flick Flack. And so if you have a deck like that, there is a chance that it's just like the opponent can go very defensive, and then you draw a non-aggressive hand where all you can do is like Kodachi for 1, Kodachi for 2, and play some bad quality blue attack for 2 damage. And at that point, the opponent has the opportunity to regain tempo. But it's harder to do. It's harder to do against a warrior deck like this, where it's much more aggressive and is running less defense. On the one turn that I did get a less aggressive hand, I was able to use those. What are they called? Refraction bolters that I had, and break them to get a go again there, and make the turn more aggressive, even though it started with not that good of a hand. So that's another thing. You know, I think using your equipment to help make your deck more consistent and enable your game plan is a really good thing in this. So another example is that in situations where you have like an all red hand, you know, sometimes having the energy saved on your tunic can get you out of there, or having an energy potion that you played on an earlier turn can get you out of there. I think it can be important to plan not just for what your deck does on the best turns, but also how you're going to mitigate potential variance from like your worst turns. Another example is actually Ranger. So I think Ranger is not a very good class right now, but one strength that Ranger does have going for them is that with the way that Azalea's ability can put a card on the bottom of your deck, in Ranger you can afford in some cases to run more like unusual or situational cards, with the thought being, I can just put this in Arsenal and then send it away if it ends up being something that isn't useful. So for instance, I've seen an Azalea deck in Blitz that actually plays Irina's Prayer. And Irina's Prayer is a terrible card against everybody except for Warrior, except for Wizard. And it's kind of okay against Runeblade, but it's not like great against Runeblade. But if you're Azalea, you can be like, okay, I'm going to play this Irina's Prayer. In a matchup where it's bad, I'm going to put it in Arsenal, and then I'm going to essentially cycle it to the bottom of my deck using Azalea's ability. And that's going to make it so that this card is much less risky to put in there relative to playing it in some deck where it might just be completely blank. So that can be a good way to make it so that you can run more situational cards. I think that the pitch system also lets you run more situational cards. For instance, I really like defense reactions that will pitch. But yeah. OnIT FAB Foundry in the chat says, once again, great game breakdown. Little plug, we'll be posting a video next week with details about the next iteration of the Playtest League. Yeah, big shout out to FAB Foundry. They were the ones who sponsored this tournament. It was a very, very fun event. So there were several weeks of like just I think it was run as like a play anywhere, like an on-demand online event where it was, you know, you were just paired up with people and you played like one game a day. And that, you know, people did that for practice. And then there was this finals where people who had played in at least 2 of the previous weeks were eligible. And then we fought it out in a more conventional tournament format. Really fun. I got a lot of experience from playing that. I definitely played more games than I would have otherwise. And then we had this cool tournament as well at the end. So I have not yet seen what the next iteration is going to be. I know that OnIT from Fab Foundry will be posting that shortly, but I definitely recommend that event to other people. I think it was a lot of fun. Okay, so I think that's going to do it for this time. A bit of a shorter broadcast, but I wanted to get this out and show the finals of that event. And yeah, that's going to do it for this one. We will be back as usual Tuesdays and Thursdays, 5:00 p.m. I'm going to be streaming more recorded games of my own gameplay, and I'm also going to be streaming other people's gameplay kind of on the fly. The one thing that I can tell you for sure is that coming up on Saturday, there is going to be a tournament. There's going to be an online tournament that is it's hosted by a store, a European store in TCG, and they are going to be hosting an online tournament. And this tournament actually starts like really early for my liking. Which, no disrespect to them, but they're in Europe. It is actually a free event on Classic Constructed if anyone is interested. I believe they've talked about it on the Discord server, but there's going to be a free Classic Constructed tournament. I think they might have some prize support from their store. I don't know 100% for sure, so don't hold me to that. but then I am going to actually be broadcasting the later rounds and or the top cut. I'm not going to be broadcasting the initial part because it's going to be at like 4 or 5 a.m. California time, but I am going to be broadcasting the finals of that. So stay tuned for that commentary coming in. We're going to get some Saturday morning Flesh and Blood. Yeah, so I think that's gonna about do it for this one. Thanks for watching, and we will be back with more Flesh and Blood as well as perhaps some Star Wars Legion content. Catch you guys later.